Boxes to builds, and it's not a bad idea either. Let's check this out. Welcome back to the mcgolfshop. Jim McCleary, most award certified club maker, club fitter, where we talk about club reviews, club repairs, and club fittings. If you would, like and subscribe, swing and hit that bell, and that way you get more of these videos when they drop. Well, Mike from Charleston, not South Carolina, but West Virginia, has sent a set of Callaway UTs. All right, Callaway UTs. Callaway UTs. And he apparently really liked one while he was on vacation in Scotland and has since got himself a whole set. Somewhere along the lines he's collected from the 18 to the 30. From the 18 to the 30. And he wants to use these as the irons in the upper end. That's not a bad idea, particularly for somebody who likes the forged look, right? And it has a wider sole. All right, it has a wider sole. It has just a teeny weeny amount of offset on it. Has a good look at a dress, I think, when we do that. All right, and basically, in my opinion, what it is a big cap on the back that gives it this look, this blade look, or this player's look. And it's basically a ginormous cavity with a lot of weight on the bottom so the ball gets in the air. Good idea. All right, good idea. He wants it to be more like his set, so we are going to put some KBS C taper 120s in them. Now the question here is, this boxes to build is going to end up with these things going together for sure. And I always like talking about a different topic in each one. In this particular issue, it's about how I receive the pieces parts and what do we do with them in order to make them fit. Well, so let's start with receiving the heads. You can see, so what's happened is somebody's removed these heads, and some of the ferrule, when you heat it up, it's plastic, right? When you heat it up, it gets all over it can get all over the club, and there it is. And it's not only on that one, it's on this one. Probably caught a little bit on fire. All right, and we got that in there, and that's all the way around. All right, all the way around. Now another issue is, and I don't know if you can see down in there or not. We'll let it try and focus. Anyway, down in there, there's a tip weight. So we got to remove the tip weight. So although I do like the weight itself, so I'm going to try and clean around it, but it may go right back in. But I got to start with a clean head in order to do a clean build. The other thing you get when you get these things is, if you can even see in there, there's a red hosel plug, for lack of a better term. And typically what they do is they go on the end of the shafts, and I don't know if that's a vibration dampener or just a stop or whatever they want to use, but I run into those quite regularly. 99 times out of 100 they disappear because they get wrecked when you go to heat them up and pull them out one way or another. Now what's happened here is, and I'll show you again. All right, in this one, if we use this as we go all the way in, and I use that, and that's how far that one went in. All right, now I got this one, put it back in there, and that's how far that one went in. So you can see that they're different. Chances are they've pulled out. If I push in a little bit, it's probably pulled out. So basically what I'm saying is that those aren't long for this world. I'm going to heat them up, I'm going to pull them out, and because you really need a universal constant when it comes to the amount of insertion, because the more it inserts, the more stable it will become and less likelihood of breaking. Because you need at least an inch to a little over an inch, right? About 1.25 inches is my fave, but 1 1/8 is fine. Start getting 1 inch, and if you're hitting these things and you're hitting diggers, you have a real opportunity to do one of two things. either loosen up the club head or just snap it off. Now, I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but back in the day, Cobra was really bad for that. They had really small insertion depths so that they could get a little bit more pop or a little more kick into the club. And that's a business decision, but I can tell you that I've re-glued and fixed quite a few of those older styles because of lack of insertion depth. Now, I have seen some new ones, and that doesn't seem to be the problem anymore. But that's just one common. Now, there could be others out there, but those are the ones I've personally seen. So what are we going to do? Well, you're going to see just like anything else. I'm going to weigh these. I'm going to weigh the shafts. I'm going to weigh the grips in order to determine a swing weight, because Mike wants a D2 swing weight, D1, if we can do this. Now, you guys know my philosophy on the swing weight is nothing but a number, but if it works, that's fine. So let's go clean these up. All right, you saw me cleaning up the outside of the irons, and this is the 18 that had all those boogers on it, and we're nice and clean there. Now the other part is in the hosel area, and you see where this thing's got a shoulder. You can see the little lip that's down there. All right, you can see all the way around. Now, what was universally in every one of these was leftover ferrule. And when you're looking at it, if it's covered with epoxy goo, it's going to look bumpy and not smooth. And you're going to, if you try and get in there and you do like this, you think you're going to get it. Clubmaker tip number 1. All right, if you want to make sure that you've gotten everything out of here, and which is basically the ferrule stuff, use one of these. What you do is you get the thing started. You see the flame? Well, you get that flame and you aim it to the inside of there, and you work it all the way around, and you give it in there about a good 10 seconds. What that will do is that will heat up, and it will make the ferrule part bubble, come to life, so to speak, and it will show up as a big black spot, and then you'll know what you have to do to dig on it. And then you can do that, and then you can clean it out until you'll see nice and shiny, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. Now on the rest of them, you saw the part with the red in there. I heated up around the outside out of here, and then threw a little bit of heat on there, and I just basically drilled it out. You don't have to get the same size. This one gets in there, it's probably about a size and about 2 sizes down from it, and that's enough to grab everything that was at the bottom. The other part is if you just need to flick out like a booger, right, you can use a hook blade, and you can get around in there, and you can just scrape it around, and that will get that one. Clubmaker tip number 2. All right, so we talked about, you saw that we talked about the weight that was in the bottom and whether or not it was essential to have it in there. Well, here's a trick on how to get that out of there. So, a tip weight looks a lot like, oh, here it is. It looks a lot, what came out of there was that. All right, that's what came out of there. Teeny weeny, all right? So, what you do is you heat the bottom right here is where it's going to set, right? Heat all the way around there, about 30, 40 seconds, and then throw some into the top so it can get loosened up out of there. And then what you do is you get the awl, you go find you an awl, get in there, and you work it around. And what that does is that catches that little centerpiece that's in there, and it works it around. You'll feel it. You'll hear it crunching and grinding, and it pulls it out, and then you can tap it out. Now, it might take 2 or 3 shots, maybe of some heat and maybe some of this and then some tapping, but it will come out, okay? And that's what you're looking for, and then that came out. So I've got them all out. I've got them all drilled out, and now it's a matter of, I've reweighed them. And the funny part is that universally, all the crud that I pulled out of here, which was glue, ferrule pieces, and what, each one of these, including that weight, only lost 1 gram. So that's not too bad. So I've weighed the shafts. The shafts are good. They're supposed to be 120. They're either 119 or 120. The grips are all 53. So it's about time to build. So I put 4 of them together. We're going to show you the last one as part of doing the build. Now, as we've always checked, you see that, right? That means this is 335, this is 370. I've already measured that part. Now, in order to do that, we're going to use a shim, the brass shim. That's my favorite thing, the brass shim. And what that's going to do is it's going to sit over there like that once we get the ferrule on, and then we're going to push it in, and that's going to absorb, because that's where it's going to take up that amount of space in order to make this solid. So that's what we're going to do there. Now, the last thing we found out when we did the measuring is that the heads were light. And that's pretty much characteristic of the UT heads, right? That's pretty much characteristic of the UT heads. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add tip weights. Now, there are 2 kinds of tip weights. There's a graphite shaft tip weight and there's a steel tip weight. And how you can tell most of the difference is the opening. Steel shafts tend to have a larger opening than graphite, so you put those in there. Now, here's another trick. Trick number 3 is that typically the 370s are actually bigger on the inside, and they do make some taper tips, but I normally don't prescribe to that. We're going to take this, which is a 370 tip weight, and we're going to put it in here. All right, and you see how it doesn't quite fit all the way? See that? But I got a trick for you, so follow me. All right, so you see that the tip weight's kind of jammed up in there. What I've carried around for tens of years is what I used to call a no bounce when it really isn't. You got a rubber hammer and a plastic hammer head. And for around here, this is a great tool. And I'll show you, and this is one of the reasons why. So we want to get that in there. Lead's pliable, steel isn't. So you just give it a couple whacks, and voila, you're in there. Now you'll see there's a lot of extra stuff here. It tends to fall off, but we take that to the sander and it finishes it off. So now about a couple seconds on the belt sander, it's cleaned up nice and even. There's no gap in there. And the best part is on the other ones we tend to glue or make sure that it is tight in there in graphite shafts. And this one, since we hammered the crud out of it, it's jammed up in there pretty good, and when this bottoms out, there's no way it's going to slide or rattle. We've already prepped the tip on this particular one, so now it's a matter of glue and ferrules, which you've seen before. We're going to do that off camera, and we're going to come back and talk about the finished product. So let's go put some clubs together. Welcome back to day 2 of the build for the Callaway utility irons. Now, what we've got is Michael from West Virginia has asked to basically take the UT irons and turn them into iron irons, right? To the sense that it's going to have the same irons that are in the rest of the set. Now, the UT is a slightly wider sole. It's basically, I believe, it's a club that has basically a cap on it to give it that look that it is more than it is. It's kind of a bad definition, but You notice how it's very thick on the bottom. It's got a pretty good size top line, which is characteristic of UTs as a whole. And then it's got this look like to give it the look much like an X-forged or whatnot. It would be my opinion that that is a cap to give it that look, and that it's a very large cavity back to give it that kind of a look. So you guys saw on the last one, on the first day, told you we glued them together, we married them up, we spine and flow, we did all that stuff. The glue's here, nice and hard, so we know that the clubs are going to be good. Now I'm going to show you something I haven't shown people in a while. We're going to turn ferrules. We're going to see how we can make these ferrules nice, right? And so what we get here is that when you put them together, normally they have a ledge. You hear that? Okay, and that's the ledge we're going to want to make smooth. We're going to want to make that smooth. And normally what happens when you go into a club maker's place, this starts happening. And it's just a measure of how good that club maker is. Make sure it's not too caved in, not make sure it's sticking too far out. Now there's multiple ways of doing the ferrule, all right? There's multiple ways of doing the ferrule. And the easiest one is with the 1x42 belt sander, right about there, and with a felt belt. That way it doesn't cut into the shaft, particularly if you're using graphite. If you're using steel, it's not a big deal, but the felt's just a little smoother, gets things done. And then what we do after that, and everything's crosshatch, so if I go like this with the belt sander, I wipe off with acetone going the other way, and then I clean up with the wheel going the other way. And then it's all done. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to switch you around so you can get a better viewpoint. We're going to do a few of these, and then we'll go on to the next one. And then what I'm going to do, and you're not going to see this part of it, is I'm going to grip them, and then we'll show you the completed product. So let's go turn a ferrule. As you can see, it doesn't take a lot to actually turn it. It just a couple of rotations around and it takes it off. Now the giveaway is the ferrule is typically very shiny, and when you're doing this you're creating a dull, right? And when you do that you can see where you're taking it off at, so that if you need to adjust it one way or to another, you can get there so you don't get a really funny looking ferrule. So now I got to take the tape off. And typically, is it needed on steel? Again, no, but it's just a habit, and that's what I do. All right, so we're going on to the next one. Acetone, whatever you can get at your local hardware store, the 2-inch paper towels. Shake it until it's nice and wet. I like leaving a couple on top, just in case I need some spares. And like I told you before, we went this way. Now we're going to go back and forth. And what this does is it helps clean up the club as well as make the ferrule shiny. You know, you get those glue boogers, and you get them nice and soft, and you can scrape them off with a thumb. You get that. And that's what it leaves behind. You just move over to a clean spot. There we go. Normally I can get about 4 of these, 2 on each side. It's really kind of dependent on how moist the towelette stays. I do it with this one, it'll be a little shinier because there's just more stuff. And then another one. You can tell these are softer ferrules because there's really quite a bit coming off. On to the shine. Came out pretty good. We put the Align MCC4s on it. We used the KBS S taper or the $ taper, and basically we came out pretty good. The requested swing weight was D2, and I was between D1 and D2, well within a spec. He even said, "Oh, you can handle D1," so hey, we're right there. So Michael, here it is for you, bud. The other part was the lie angles. The 18 was off just a little bit. All the lofts were dead solid, so we put those back in. Now the profile on the S taper is more butt stiff, so if you were just doing a frequency, they would come out more stiff than advertised, and they did. But they were all consistent all the way through. That was the most important thing, so that they play the same. So hopefully you learned a little something. If you got any questions or anything, put it in the show notes. And as always, let's see your scores go low.